good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're talking about creating great leaders. Transforming organizations in our society to not only, be there as far as corporate creation, being able to sell items and create things, but also to create a corporate culture that people thrive in. We talk about purpose, and we talk about direction, and we talk about creating a happy, positive culture, but we see more often than not corporations exploiting their workers. We see situations that are not in the most best of light, and we also don't seem to have that combination between people that are working at these corporations and also feeling as though they are fulfilling a purpose. Joining me here on Live Your True Life Perspectives on today's show, Jeff Hayzlett. Jeff actually is a keynote speaker, a best-selling author, the author of The Hero Factor, How Great Leaders Transform Organizations and Create Winning Cultures. He has a radio show podcast called All Business. He also is a TV host as well, and he also runs a company called C-Suite TV, which is amazing because it's got all kinds of content on it, and I'm very partial to that too because the celebrity perspective is also residing there too. Jeff, great to have you on the radio today. How are you doing?
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's awesome because, I guess I met you a few years back in Florida. You were at an event, and it was just, you're a very powerful speaker, keynote speaker, and it was really interesting to listen, to what you had to say. So how did you really get started in this type of geography as far as business, as far as really helping leaders and encouraging that type of progress?
Well, I appreciate that. I got started primarily, it wasn't something like most things, everybody always comes to you and say, hey, when did you pick out your vision, your mission? And I'm going like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Who does that? I don't think anybody sits down, hey, I'm going to be this or I'm going to do that. I think we take a different turn in life, and I think things kind of come to us. And maybe some people say, yeah, I'm going to be a fireman, I'm going to be a doctor. But I think most people who are doing the kind of work that I do don't say, hey, I'm going to go out and, be a guru, a thought leader, or, a coach or someone who's helping to inspire other people. We just do it by doing it. And that's what I've done. I bought and sold over 250 businesses in my career, over 25 billion in transactions. And I think that the reason it's come about is that, I was doing it, and I was doing it. People started asking me about it, and I started telling people about it and how we do it, the way we do it. And so it just evolved over time. And then the other part of it, I think, is just giving back. Actually, I think we just sit down and say, hey, we're going to give back. It's just part of what we do. I think the more you give, the more you get. And so I try to give as much as I possibly can to other people to help other people, because I sure didn't get here by just being smart and timely and all those things. I had a lot of other people there to help me a great deal.
I find that interesting, from my perspective, being a therapist, you have a lot of clients that, wonder, would it have been helpful if I would have had the support system? And I think you're so right, because when we don't have a support system, or we don't have people cheerleading us, or we don't have people looking out for us, life is a lot different.
No, without question. I mean, you've got to have, even like when I was in corporate offices, in a big corporate, as a Fortune 100 officer, you got to have air cover. So when I was a chief marketing officer of a company that was about 180 billion, running budgets of billions of dollars, even then you've got to have some air, what I call air cover. You got to have someone who's helping you, take care of things overall. And so that's or watching what you do as you're making those changes or making those, navigating some really treacherous water sometimes that you do in business, and you do those. And, and when you're doing that, then you're driving change. You got a lot of haters out there at the same time. So you got people coming at you and gunning for you. So it's good to have that support mechanism there.
What is some of your advice and guidance on people that are making some changes, some big change makers, that are going through some stress and some drama and kind of dealing with those haters? How do you put things back into perspective and keep, doing the good work and keep plodding forward?
Hey, I just don't pay attention to them. I mean, I ignore them. It's kind of like, I'm going to, like when I put a new book out, like the Hero Factor book that's out now, you get people write negative reviews because they don't like something, they don't, whatever. I don't. It doesn't make a difference. I just don't pay attention to them. When people say, "Hey, what about those little voices in your head?" Just like those little voices in your head, I stopped listening to them a long time ago. I know what I'm doing. I know what my moral compass is. I know where I'm going with it. I know right from wrong because my mom and dad, helped teach that and instill that into me. And I've lived those values. And if you have values, then I don't need to hear all these other people. Like, what the hell? You're not going through the same thing I am. You don't know what I'm talking about. Shut up. Go move on. Get away from me. You're just an energy drainer. You're just sucker. You're a taker, not a giver. Go away. And that's kind of how I approach things like that.
I agree with you, but it's hard for sometimes, too, when people haven't had that kind of upbringing, don't know, and they haven't had that support, because a lot of times we go inward, right? We go inward and we start, questioning our validity, our self-worth, our self-value, and then you get some of those naysayers, and they start kind of picking apart and pushing some of those buttons, and the reason why it connects with people is it's because it's a question in your own mind.
Well, you just said a key word. You just said naysayers. I got to pull that out because in the front of one of my very first books, in fact, I'm grabbing it right now. My very first book, the Mirror Test, I wrote into the very front of this, the dedication to this book. Let me see if I can pull it out. I remember it from memory, but I'm going to see if I can actually read it. Yeah. To the tenacious and driven men and women who have succeeded in business against the odds, in spite of themselves, and to the surprise of all the people who told them success would never happen. Booyah. All right. But then at the same time, I wrote, and my second book was Running the Gauntlet. And in Running the Gauntlet, it was about all those people who were captains of no, who fought to kill you all the way. And this is what I wrote to the dedication of that book, was to all the naysayers, opportunists, and obstructionists who do their best to stop the progress of change in an organization. Note, we will beat you. Okay? And that's the kind of attitude you have to have. Because trust me, there are going to be people that are going to line up on the other side of you. There are going to be people who write negative things. Like I said, I had someone write some really negative review about one of my books. And the team came to me and said, "What should we do?" I said, "Well, who is this person?" And they went and looked him up on Amazon. And he writes reviews of all kinds of things, but he's mostly written reviews about vacuum cleaners. So here's the guy who was writing book reviews about how, good vacuum cleaners, bad vacuum cleaners, and then decided to become a reviewer of a best-selling business book that sold, hundreds of thousands of copies or millions of copies, depending on which book it was. I can't remember. And he's negative on me. Why would I care? He's writing reviews of vacuum cleaners. Basically, the guy sucks, if you look at it from that perspective, right? So no, I'm not going to worry about stuff like that. I'm not going to let those people get to me. I'm not going to let them, it's not going to happen. Not in my vocabulary.
So I agree with you on that. I mean, we all have some of those YouTube reviewers, out there too, that can be very interesting. But how do you deal? So this is a question that I have. Sometimes you have an organization, you bring on employees. They, in the interview process throughout the first 6 months, year, 2 years, there's that, that kind of that honeymoon phase a little bit. And all of a sudden their kind of true negative, naysaying self comes out. And all of a sudden they begin to kind of pollute the environment, and then they try to take on, or they work on trying to get other folks on their side. How do you deal with something like that in an organization with 50 to 100 employees where you got one real naysayer and then you got some people around them that are pretty pliable, and then that's when they start trying to downgrade the stuff within the organization? Yeah,
get rid of them. Get rid of them. You can only move as fast as your slowest common denominator. Your job. When I went to Eastman Kodak as a CMO, I said, some of you are going to pull us down. Some of you are going to be the slowest common denominator. And let me be very clear. And I stood in front of, at that time, 7,500 marketing people on the first day I was there. I said, trust me, I'm going to hunt you down. I am going to find you. I am going to ask you to leave the company. We love you, but we're going to miss you because we've signed up to do this. We've signed up to make this happen in the company. And this isn't a question. This is a question about survival, about growth, about where we want to go and where we want to lead the business and how we want to lead the business. So either get on this train, get on this bus, or I will run you over with it. And that's what a leader should do. You should talk about your conditions of satisfaction. You should talk about where you want to go with the business and how you want to lead that business. And once that's done, get on the bus, drink the Kool-Aid, drink the champagne, get on the wagon. But again, get on the bus or it's going to run you over. That's your job. That's your job as a leader. And the more you do of it, the more people will follow you and the more that will get done and you will have success.
That's powerful information. When we return, we'll be talking more about the hero factor, more about what Jeff has in store in the future, as well as his podcast, and some other information on how to create that reality within your business to make things flourish and to have the best possible outcome. Stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Well, you know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
I'm learning to fly. Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm joined by Jeff Hayzlett. Jeff is a TV radio host, keynote speaker, and best-selling author. In his most recent book, The Hero Factor: How Great Leaders Transform Organizations and Create Winning Cultures. Jeff, it was interesting right before the break. We were talking about getting rid of the slowest, the slowest worker, but not only that, the naysayers within organizations, and how that can really help to change the corporate culture. Are there other things that people need to be aware of? I mean, obviously there's millions of things, but what is another thing too about how do we create more of a positive impact and people working together and kind of just, spending that time? How do you create more of that culture that provides that type of output?
Well, I think that's a great question. In my recent book, The Hero Factor, and by the way, you can go to theherofactorbook.com and you can get a free assessment on where your business sets as a hero culture. There's some great tools. Whether you buy the book or not, you can go there and get them. But in the book, I talk about your walk-away values. We have found that businesses that have values, high values, that are value-based, that kind of put people over profit. In essence, they gross more money than the other businesses in their industry. They make more money. They have happier employees. They have customers who are more engaged, and they have vendors who want to do business with them. And they're also revered in their communities in which they're at. And then one of the core things in there is their values. And what are those values? Well, almost all of them have what we call walk-away values, which means these are the values that we push so hard in the company that if they're not adhered to, you have to walk away. You either walk away, you make the employees walk away from the business, you walk away from doing business with that kind of person or those kinds of companies that don't live the same values, or you don't ship products based on these things, whatever it might be. But you've got certain things that are set in stone. Much like the Native American Indians, there's a tribe, the Cheyenne, and they used to have a warrior sect called the dog soldiers. And these dog soldiers, when they used to take care of the village, they used to go out ahead of them, when they went from one, camp to another camp, they would lead, they'd follow to make sure that the tribe was protected. They'd make sure that those that didn't have food would have food. When they were, in battle, they would stake themselves down into the ground, and they would tie themselves to that stake during battle and would never so they would never retreat. That's walk-away values. And so what are your walk-away values in your business? I mean, and then you tie that together, Ashley. I think it's an awesome question is to what are your real conditions of satisfaction? So as a business, what is it that you're trying to do and where are you trying to go with it to make that happen?
That's powerful. And because I think, we have to have some sort of direction. I mean, a lot of times we kind of throw things together, we do what we need to do, and we try to figure out how to make the best of the situation. Sometimes the situation can work out if given the proper leadership. Sometimes the situation has to be augmented. And I think sometimes in our culture, in our society, based on sometimes our fear of not being liked or the fear of that self-esteem or that self-worth or whatever that looks like, or the fear of not knowing or feeling though we might not have all the knowledge can get in the way of us doing what's right for an organization. Totally.
And so, for leaders, we have to be aware of what we're not aware of. So we should constantly be in a state of trying to become more aware of the things around us, or what might be possible. Why are we making mistakes? Why are we doing so well? What's causing those things? How can I make more of that happen? How can I make less of that to happen? And that's, I think, an important part for a lot of senior leaders.
So I was going to ask you, I know that you have a podcast and a radio show. It's called All Business. I'm assuming that you're focusing on how to create a successful business. Tell me more about that podcast.
Yeah, so what I do is I visit with people who run iconic brands, billion-dollar brands. I have these are the leaders of some of the biggest names that you've ever seen, and also very iconic figures in politics and business, the news. So I might have Penn Jillette, on there, and of course Penn's runs a success. He's a big Las Vegas headliner, come from humble beginnings, doesn't believe in God. He's kind of a libertarian, but probably one of the smartest guys I've ever met, but yet he runs a really successful business. Well, what are the traits that make that up? What was the most difficult things? I might have rocker Gene Simmons, and I almost made Gene cry on my show, not because I was mean, but because I got him to tell stories about how he got started in his first business. And he was like 6 years old back in Israel, and he was selling cactus fruit, at a bus stop. And, he tells that story about how he took his shekels home, and he stopped and bought an ice cream cone because that was his treat. But the other 98 cents or whatever it was at the time, he took it home and gave it to his mother. And his mother, of course, right away thought, well, where did you get this money? And she, of course, she kind of yelled at him because she thought maybe he did something bad to get it, Mm-hmm. And then he told her the story. And then he said, his mother turned to him and kissed him and said, "You're my little man." And, when he told that story, well, what an impression that made. So you can imagine that then spawned him at an early age, all the way through his youth, to go and be a great entrepreneur. And if you know anything about Gene Simmons, now he's kind of nuts, but you got to be nuts to dress up like he does and get on stage. But the guy is the ultimate entertainer. He's got more licensing business than anybody I know of. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever seen. And, he makes money selling everything from caskets with Kiss's name on it to underwear. So, he's done pretty well.
What are some of the other favorite interviews that you've done on your radio show?
Oh man, I've done generals. I've done, one of them that was fun, that's just different, was a guy that's making flour from crickets.
What?
Yeah.
What is this?
Yes, it's an alternative way to make baking flour, and he's using crickets as the source for the protein.
Wow.
So it's higher in protein. Now you got to imagine how many millions of crickets you got to have to make a pound of flour. And so I heard about this young man. I think he was even on the Shark Tank at one point. And I just thought that was an interesting thing. And, it was an interesting story. And guy's an easy-go-lucky kind of guy. And that was another one. Pierce Morgan. I love talking to Pierce Morgan from, Pierce was on Celebrity Apprentice, used to be at Daily Mail. He's a media celebrity. And, of course, I met him when I was a judge on Celebrity Apprentice, and he was one of the contestants. So, but I've always enjoyed Pierce. I don't always believe or agree with his position, but we've always had great conversations. And so it was great to be able to talk to him. And he and I actually share the same agent in Hollywood, too. And then, Steve Forbes, General Wesley Moore, I can just go on and on and on. The founder of Sam Adams Beer, all these wonderful stories. And there are always just different stories that come out of it that are just make it unique conversations, even the bad ones, where I've talked to one guy who wrote the book, used to do the Twitter account that used to be Overheard in Goldman Sachs, and he told me about how women are used as tethered goats. And of course, that made me so mad that I actually threatened to punch him in the face and punch him in the throat on my show. So you're getting a sense of my walkaway values. I was so offended about how he would say that about women and wouldn't take ownership of it, saying it was the industry that was to blame and not the people, and nonetheless, it's the people that make up the industry, which then drive the values. And so, having a daughter, and of course I pointed out to him, he has a daughter, aren't you embarrassed by saying something like that? So you get that kind of feedback, all of them for different reasons. So that's what makes it all business, right? It's all business. It's all part of business. And it's a great way of having conversation.
That's so much fun. Yeah, that's some great interviews. Yeah, I remember you were on the Celebrity Apprentice.
Yeah, I actually helped come up with kind of the concept as a backer of that as a brand, and then they asked me to be a judge for 3 years, and I was on about 9 episodes, I think, overall.
How was it?
You can see me on those shows. I loved it. Loved it. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
That's cool. Have you ever been have you been on the Shark Tank or anything like that?
Originally I was asked to be a part of the Shark Tank, and I just didn't think it was the right role for me and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. So yeah, it just didn't work out. So
is there some other TV things up here in the very future for you?
Yeah, I do. I do some television today. I've got a show on our own C-Suite TV. You can find me on the Executive Perspectives, Jeffrey Hayzlett. I used to have my own primetime show on Bloomberg at one point. It was the #1 television show in business. And then I walked away to create C-Suite Network and C-Suite TV and C-Suite Radio and C-Suite Book Club. So I'm happy that I did that because we're growing, and 2, we're making a lot of money.
That's awesome. When we return, we'll be talking more about C-Suite TV and the network, as well as the opportunities and the options on that platform and how that really kind of just connects us all. So stay tuned. Jeff will be back here in just a moment. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time, 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Joining me today, TV radio host, keynote speaker, best-selling author of The Hero Factor, How Great Leaders Transform Organizations and Create Winning Cultures, Jeff Hayzlett. Jeff, great to have you here at Live Your True Life Perspectives. Right before the break, we were talking about C-Suite TV and all the different options. And I'm partial to, obviously, C-Suite because the Celebrity Perspective, my show, is on there. I actually won a Telly Award this year for that show.
Yeah, I know. It's one of our great shows. We've got so many. I started the network right after I was a primetime show on Bloomberg. I was doing that. And I actually more people started watching me online than were watching me through broadcast. And I went to the network and said, geez, can't we change this? I mean, why are we giving this all away? And this seems kind of weird. Why are we doing it like this? And so they weren't really interested in doing that. So I said, well, I quit. And I went out and I looked at it. Of course, I said, I quit. I'm going to go start C-Suite TV. And we created an OTT network. That OTT network, over the top television, now has 60 shows. And then that led us to creating a podcast network, which we now have 140 podcast shows on, well over almost 6,000 episodes a year. And it's just, we're going to town with it. It's just awesome.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So, when was the first time, because I know that, when you were young, did you have any idea that you were going to be here at this point? Or did you have any glimpse of that?
No. I always knew, because of the way my parents raised me and what we did, hard work and then, blah, 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 we sometimes take for granted, but that I'd always be good at whatever I did. I'd do it, So, and then as I got through junior high and high school, I always thought I'd be doing something big. I just never knew what that was. And I kind of started off in politics, and that led me to understanding business. And I found out, well, in business, you get paid a lot more. And then, building wealth became an important thing for me so that my family had a different life than I had when I was growing up. And hopefully my children, my grandchildren will have a different life and a better life than I had, based on just, and money helps to make that happen a little bit. At least it takes the pressure off. And so, I was very focused on how I could build wealth, how I could continue to grow professionally in terms of knowledge, education, because that's a very important thing for me to learn new things. And my third condition of satisfaction was always around having fun. Because if you make money and you're learning new things, learning new things, great. But if you're not having fun doing it, well, then that's a job. And I'm not about jobs. I go to bed every night, Ashley, hoping I'll hurry up and sleep so I can get going the next day.
That's awesome.
That says something. So if you're an entrepreneur out there, and if you're not living like that, now don't get me wrong. There are days when I'm going like, how are we going to make payroll? How are we going to do this? How are we going to pay the bills? Just like everybody else. It's not easy. And even if your business is multiple millions of dollars or billions, it's the same thing. You got obligations to make, bills to pay, promises to keep. If it was easy, everybody would do it. It's not about being easy. It's about doing it. And it's hard, it's the reason why it's hard. It's hard. That's the name of the game. It's hard because it's hard. Well, that's why they call it hard work. So that's what you have to do. And if you don't put in that time, now some people get lucky, and there's a couple of companies out there that have gotten real lucky, and gotten $1 billion for this or for that. And usually that just doesn't happen all the time, those unicorns. And, most of it's just by, you slug it out every day.
Let me ask you, I know a lot of people nowadays, because we feel like, 40 is the new 20 and what have you. Do you feel, because I feel that age doesn't matter as much, but do you feel that age matters in the hiring process still as much as it did before?
Well, I tell you right now, I personally no. The answer is no. I'm 59, but I feel like I'm 30 something. I really do. I feel that way. I've always felt that way. But you know what? Quite frankly, when I was 16, I felt like I was 30 something. So there you go. So I think we're locked into a different age, our own sense of who we are. We kind of get locked in that, and that's what we become. Just like when I see some men and women dress a lot younger than they should be dressing, maybe they're kind of locked in. Same thing. I just think that, like when I was a young, 14, 15, 16, you'd see me, I was dressed, they used to call me preppy, because I used to have a certain look, and I used to carry a briefcase to high school, for goodness sakes, so, we're all like that. But I will tell you though, right now, Ashley, I've never seen so many calls, so many emails from people who are over 50 who are telling me they can't get jobs, who are struggling. And I actually know someone's writing a book on it. I'm sure there's probably been other books on it, but I do think we tend to think that some of the older generation isn't as up to speed on some of the technology and so forth. I'm a millennial. I'm just trapped in a baby boomer body. Mm-hmm. That's the way I look at things. I adopt new technologies. I do things the way I like. I utilize all kinds of things just the way most millennials do. I tend to think very similar to that too. I'm just older. Now that makes me more marketable. I think there are other people who have been less marketable and they're lumped into that right now. And that's a wrong thing to do.
So obviously, if somebody was, they're more millennial type, they're on the go, they're, technology savvy, they're they have their finger on the pulse in the industry, they shouldn't worry about what their age says. They should just go for it. If they want to make some changes in their career or they want to sit there and put their resume out and do something, you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, and I think it goes both ways. I think it goes for the millennials too. I mean, just because you're millennial doesn't mean you're hot, doesn't mean you're great. I was at an event for Verizon one day. They were doing some filming, and I was doing filming for one of our TV shows. And they asked me if I'd speak to this group of millennials that was in. And so I was talking to them and so forth and something. And somebody said something, to me about, you should pay attention to what we have to say. I said, why? You're not my audience. I don't give a rat's rear end what you think about how you think, whether you feel good about it or not. And he goes, well, you should. We have the money. I said, my friend, I got more money than all of you in the room. So I really don't care. So again, just because you're millennial or just because you're a man, you're a woman or this or that, you're left-handed, right-handed, I don't care. Doesn't mean you're relevant and doesn't mean I have to pay attention to you. Show me your value. Show me how how we both benefit. And then, and don't no letters or calls, please. I still believe that, we should treat everybody with great dignity and as human beings, as people. So I'm not being a hard ass about that and saying, we should ignore those things. Quite the opposite. I think we should find those things that bring us commonality and value together. And through that, that's how we can respect each other even more than the give and respect that we should give to each other as just human beings. So don't, no cards and letters, please.
I love that. So let me ask you, Jeff, wealth of knowledge, I find you very motivational. For some folks out there that, really wanting to create something, just a little worried, a little stressed out, any motivation for those people that, they got something, but they're just a little scared of putting it out there. I know that you have some motivation for folks just to kind of make it happen. What would that be?
Well, let me tell you, the biggest one is if you fail, if you make a mistake, it doesn't go right. Is anyone going to die? No. I mean, I just had a friend of mine, a good friend, she went through personal bankruptcy, called me because she was all upset, owed me money, so forth and on. But she called me, and I appreciated that. But she was like how she looks and so forth. I said, you just used a tool that some of the biggest icons in the world use. So did you die? No. Are you going to be able to recover from this and go back and be a contributor to society? And so, yes. Okay. Stop it. Quit looking in the mirror and beating yourself up, So for the most part, for most of us, we hold back because it's got to be perfect. We hold back because not everything's in alignment. It's not the right time. Give it a shot, and my whole thing is anyone going to die? And unless you're doing brain surgery or heart surgery, or operating heavy equipment, or running in the streets of a busy highway or something, you're not going to die. So get over yourself and get going.
That's powerful, because I think a lot of times we take it too seriously. We're always waiting for the conditions to be perfect. The wind's got to be at this speed. Everything's got to be great. Life's got to be great. And then what happens is if we don't do it, we just have a bunch of regret and life passes us by.
Yeah, a great idea without implementation is just air. So think about that. You might have the greatest idea in the world, the greatest process, the greatest whatever. But if you don't implement it, it doesn't mean squat. And it's just talk. And so get off your butt and make it happen. That's the best advice I can give to you or anybody.
Powerful stuff. Jeff, I'd love to have you come back on the show.
Anytime. I love it. You got me riled up now.
Awesome. We're doing some more stuff. We got some really neat stuff going on, obviously here on the network and then on the podcast. And we also have a digital show that we're working on. I'd love to have you be one of the first guests on the show.
Let's go.
Okay, you heard it here. Jeff's coming back on the show. So, wonderful show, Jeff. Thanks so much for your information, your motivation, and also what all you're doing to impact the industry, but also to help people and really focus that factor of doing the right thing, but also, being successful in the process.
Fantastic.
What a great interview with Jeff. I love his enthusiasm and his motivation and his directness. When I return, I'll be talking more about how we can take some of these concepts and ideas and integrate them into our personal life at home. Because remember, we are so many facets, right? We're not just one facet or two. We're multifaceted individuals who have to deal with a lot of different things in one day. So when I return, I'll be talking about how you can incorporate this into your day-to-day life and how to create more positive influences in your life and in your home. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck. Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking about motivation. We've been talking about the hero factor with Jeff Hayzlett. Right now I want to talk about how you can take the information and knowledge that we were just talking about and how to integrate that into your personal day-to-day life outside of your work. We are multifaceted individuals, right? We have many facets. We have many sides to us. And just like we work on a daily basis, we go to work, we come home, we have our family life, right? We have our personal life. We have those things, whether we're married, we're single, we have kids, we don't have kids, divorce. We are all dealing with our own private life. And we're also working and having friends and having that type of dynamic in our life as well as family, right? So we're multifaceted individuals. And so some of the information that Jeff and I were talking about earlier really prescribes itself to the home life as well. One of the things that I want you to be aware of is to be aware of those energy suckers in your life, being aware of those naysayers in your life. You know, we have a tendency of not realizing those naysayers. We have a tendency of not realizing the energy suckers because a lot of these folks have been around our life for a long time. Some of them actually come in the form of a parent or a sister, a brother, or even an old best friend that has a tendency of telling us constantly how we're not going to be able to do something, or we're going to be unable to create something, or whatever. And because they've been around so long, or they are family, we just kind of deal with it. More often than not, we don't deal with it. We actually listen to what they have to say. We process it, and we actually put that into our own life. Well, I better not try that because that's probably not going to go well. Or I better not waste my time on this because I'm not going to make any money doing it. And the list goes on. What I found is that I have fallen prey in my past to naysayers. I've fallen prey to my past to the negative energy suckers in my life, believing the negative rhetoric. Believing that I can't create something, do something, be who I want to be. And unfortunately, when I believed it, by believing that, I put my life on hold. I put my life on hold. I put my life on autopilot. And I tried to be what I think other people wanted me to be, or I tried to be what I thought a successful person would be. And that just did not help me in the long run. And I find that if we can spot these folks early on, okay, if we can spot these folks early on and understand where these people are coming from, we can begin to not put much stock into what they say. Okay? Because when it comes to family, it's not like we can just cut family out and say, see ya. I mean, some people do. But for the most part, we still love certain facets or aspects of them. We don't want to cut them out. And I feel like when we cut people out, sometimes it's, if it's somebody that's not that close to us, it's somebody that seems to be angry or revengeful, that's one thing. But I feel that a lot of times when we cut people out, we're not really learning from the process. And so you don't need to necessarily hang out with the naysayer or the negative energy sucker. You don't want to hang out with them for a long period of time. You can have little spots and pockets of time with them. But I want you to begin to take a step back emotionally when you interact with them. I want you to begin to realize the amount of energy and power that you give these people and how this can also backfire and get in the way of you creating the life that you've always wanted. You find that we can have those naysayers that tell us that we can't create something or we can't do something, or it's not a good idea to marry so-and-so, or it's not a good idea to take this job, or it's not a good idea to move here, or our career is destined for failure, whatever. It's like all those things, life is too short. And I realize that because many of us have self-esteem and self-worth issues, we have a tendency of being codependent, we actually listen to this. And what happens is if we don't stop listening to it over a period of time, later on down the road, we have a lot of regret. And that regret builds up. And we begin to realize that we haven't lived our life for us. And I don't want you to have to go through that. I don't want you to have to live that regret. I want you to live every life and every day and every moment to its fullest. And so when we're doing that, we have to be aware of that. So being able to be aware of and take inventory of the people in your life who are naysayers, being able to limit the amount of exposure time to these individuals, and when you are around them, not taking what they say personally. Another thing that I want you to be aware of is the energy that you are giving out. How are you projecting yourself? How are you acting? Okay? When you walk into a room, what kind of energy do you have? When you walk into a room, how do you say hi? How do you communicate with people? So these are things that you just kind of want to think about, because the way you open the door and walk into a room, the way you communicate, the energy that you're putting off directly affects other people. And does that energy and your attitude project the way in what you want to project? It's just that simple. Energy and attitude are more important than what you're wearing. I mean, that is like the clothes of your energy, right? Your energy and attitude is everything. You can win an entire room over, or you can isolate yourself. You can anger people. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can even scare people. It just depends on the energy that you are giving out, how you are being perceived, And that energy that you give out is based on your personal perspective. So what's going on there? What is in your mind? What are the mental thoughts? And that's another thing that I talk about on numerous shows, numerous episodes of Live Your True Life Perspectives, is on that negative broken record. What are you thinking? What's going through your mind to create this thought process, for that thought process to become your attitude, to project that energy, okay? And these are all very important things. We can talk about other people's energy and attitude all day, but it comes down to our own energy and attitude. Normally, what we are given off, we also receive back. Now, that's not always true, but we do need to check ourselves first in order to really focus and to understand. First off, we got to check ourselves. We got to do an inventory, a personal inventory. Our life changes, and understanding our life and getting control over our life begins with taking a life inventory. And that begins with understanding ourselves, our emotions, our thoughts, our attitude, our energy. And then also we can go from there, once we understand that stuff, to directly reflect and understand other people's energy and attitude, and the people that we want to spend more time with and the people that we don't want to spend so much time with. The last thing that I want to share with you on today's show is that, a lot of times we think this, but we don't always do it, is that we need to act from the highest good. We can't just talk about doing the right thing. We can't just talk about, oh, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I believe in this, and I got unicorns and rainbows. You need to do it all the time. You need to be of the utmost honesty and authentic person you possibly can be on a moment-to-moment basis, no matter what situation you're in. And you have to do it when nobody's looking. Because if you're doing it that way, it will commit to memory. You will be that way all the time, and you will constantly be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and being aware of the energy around you, being the energy of yourself, but also being mindful of who you are. Because when we get on autopilot and we just say things, or we get on autopilot because we are codependent, because we want people to like us, we end up making mistakes. We make bad choices, and usually those choices come home to roost. So think about that. I want you to be aware of those naysayers. I want you to be aware of your own energy and attitude, and then I want you to work from the highest good in every occasion and situation in your life. I hope this show has helped you. Please share the show with your friends and family. Also, if you have chance, go to YouTube. Check out YouTube. Go to Ashley Burgess, Berges. Also, if you want to check the Celebrity Perspective out, go to csuitenetwork.com, csuitenetwork.com, click on the Celebrity Perspective. And for more information on Jeff's latest book, The Hero Factor, go to herofactorbook.com. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time, you know it. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.